The disturbing nature of the reality that any moment could be our last can snap us right into conscious, intentional awareness.
Am I living an intentional life and not have to take a tragedy to wake up and say, oh man. Hi everyone, welcome back to our next video here on the Examined Life Daily. I'm Bob.
I'm Autumn.
And we have an idea we'd like to share with you. Recently I came across a quote that I love, and it really stirred some thoughts in my mind, and we talked about it, and we thought maybe we would share some of those thoughts with you. The quote is from a man named Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, and the quote is, "It is only with the heart that one can see rightly. What is essential is invisible to the eye." And, you know, something I've given a lot of thought to in my life in the last 10 years or more is values that I want to live by, the goals I have set. Am I going somewhere deliberately and following a path to it? Or am I just wandering aimlessly around? I would say the vast majority of my life, I've just been blown by the winds and conformed to what society said, this is what you should be doing. And so that's what I've been doing. We kind of both have the idea of talking about a deliberate, intentional life, following values that dictate where we are, who we are, what we do.
When Bob suggested this topic, I absolutely loved the idea of it, because I think that unless we intentionally bring a guiding set of principles to our choices, then we're just going to kind of get swept away in a cultural flow. We talk a lot about the end of life and not wanting to reach the end of life looking back and saying, boy, I wish I did life differently. And so bringing values forward in the choices that we make can just have such a profound impact on our quality of life. In fact, Bob, I'm curious, it sounded like there was something about this quote, the invisible factor of the values, that spoke to you. Is that right?
Very much so, because, you know, most of us just live our lives by conforming to society. And what does society tell us? It tells us to get a job, get an education, get married, buy a house, save for our future, have 2.5 kids. I guess I don't know where that half kid goes, but to have 2.5 kids. And, you know, that's what, it's all things you see, you think about, you watched your parents do it, you're modeling after your parents. It's all in the physical level and the plane of the physical. And you know what this quote says is that what's truly essential, invaluable, is what's invisible to the eye, what is not here on the natural plane. And, you know, just recently, there was the huge fire in Los Angeles. You know,
right.
Essentially, big chunk of Los Angeles just burned to the ground. And you would watch that on TV. You know, we're all interested and curious to see that. And what you would hear over and over again is, but, you know, I lost everything. But the people I love are here. I even got the pets. And that's what's important. And so they've lost everything visible, but that which is invisible, that love and devotion and connection and history with the people they loved, they kept that. If we would carry that thinking into all of our life, then I think our lives would be much more rich and much more full. We would have, I think we'd have better lives if we said, what is essential today to me, and lived by that as a guiding light, as a North Star.
Without intention, it can be easy to just slip again into a cultural flow, into a family flow, into a flow that isn't necessarily what you want.
And when I think about this, you know, we all start at birth. We have our early family experiences, our growing up experiences, peers, school, careers, and so on. But we all end up at the exact same place. All of us are going to meet again at one point in our lives, and that's at death. We're all born, we're all going to die. There aren't any exceptions. And it's the tragedies. The tragedy snaps you out of the illusion that you've fallen into. I really like the way you said that. We fall into this just following the currents and going with the flow, and yet the tragedy snaps you out and makes you think about your life and what's really important to me. The house didn't matter. I'm so sad to lose it, all the memories and everything, and I've got to start all over, and it's going to be so hard, and it's terrible. But what's important are the people in my life. I think it's so important to stop and wake up. I think there's an element of waking up and saying, "No, I'm sleepwalking through life again," and I know I do that all the time. I don't want to sleepwalk through life. I want to live intentionally, with a purpose, with a goal, with a plan, and have values, invisible values, that will carry me through and make me have the very best possible life I can have.
One of my all-time favorite quotes ever is, "We are all just walking one another home." And what you were sharing about how we do all ultimately, we meet again. We will meet again, and we're all walking one another home. And when we forget that, we might be apt to be impatient and rude, and there's so many different things we can choose to value, even if it's not a conscious choice. If I'm rude to somebody because I'm impatient, that is acting upon a value, maybe not my value, but it's acting upon a value. And the other quote that comes to mind, particularly when you were talking about the fires in Los Angeles, the quote is, "Barns burned down. Now I can see the moon." When stuff is lost, that can be very disorienting. That being said, we have the opportunity to say, okay, all this stuff is out of my way, and now I can really see what matters. In fact, there's such powerful stories out there of people who did literally lose their home to hurricanes, to fires. I mean, heck, this is even kind of like my RV story.
It is.
For any folks who don't know, I had an RV and it just catastrophically broke down beyond the point that I was willing to continue to invest in it. And it was kind of like a loss like that. It was actually the conscious set of values that I had about how I wanted to live my life that I said, I am not putting any more money into this. I'm letting it go.
I think our goal, I think that I can speak for you, is that it would not take a tragedy in your life to wake you up and become aware that you're sleepwalking, you're just going through the motions of life again, because it's so easy to fall into that.
Right.
But am I living an intentional life and not have to take a tragedy to wake up and say, oh man.
Bob has quotes of the day, and many of the quotes that you share about do bring the awareness of what is important right to the forefront. And also, I think of Stoic philosophy. A lot of the quotes really are so kind of rooted in this idea of memento mori. Do you want to talk a little bit about what memento mori is?
You stole my idea. Yes, so thank you for giving it back. Yeah. We haven't talked about this.
Right.
We don't really know what the other is going to say. And yes, memento mori is the idea that you don't wait for the tragedy to wake you up. Memento means memory. You can hear it. Memento is a memory of a past event. And mori means like mortuary. It means death. Remember death. They even go so far as to say, think about your children's death. Think about your loved one's death. Think about your wife, your best friend. We're all going to die, and one day they're going to all be gone. I could lose my children, and in fact, that very thing happened to me. I lost a son. Had I lived my life with memento mori, had I made that an important part of my life, my son's going to die, and I'm going to die. What am I going to do today to make sure he knows how much I love him and care about him? Instead of waiting for the tragedy, preempt the tragedy and be ready at every moment of our lives to lose our lives or to lose our loved ones. I think our lives will be richer and fuller.
I worked for a couple of years with adolescents who had cancer. And I will tell you, those adolescents who were like 13, 14 years old, they had the wisdom of somebody who was about 85.
And I'm reminded of another quote. This is a quote by a man named Jim Rohn. He said that time is more valuable than money because you can always make more money, but you can't get more time. And so I think that's really what we're talking about as an essential value is time. Yeah. And we both love the Stoics.
Oh,
and
yeah.
This is another hugely important topic in Stoicism. The way we burn time, we waste time. Time is the most valuable thing in our lives, and that's why memento mori is important. Those people in the fires or in the floods or the hurricanes or whatever, the earthquakes, had someone died, the one thought that would have been devastating to them is, how did I spend my time with that person? The time is gone. and I'm left with the results of the decisions I've made, the values I've lived by in the past.
The disturbing nature of the reality that any moment could be our last can snap us right into conscious, intentional awareness. You know, that there's the optimist, the glass is half full, the pessimist, the glass is half empty, the realist is the glass is half filled. And so that sense of memento mori, of Stoic philosophy, the glass is half filled. This is what's happening. Therefore, how do I want to live related to it? One of the things Bob and I thought would be fun for this particular video was to think about the things that we value individually and kind of share them, and a little bit about why those are such North Stars, as Bob would say, or guiding lights for us. And here's one of the things that we invite you to do right now. Feel free to pause the video and maybe make a list of 5 to 10 values that guide the decisions that you feel best about in life. And then we can sort of participate in this discussion together.
Excellent idea.
Well, Bob, would you like to kick us off?
For me, it's love. It's always love. Living a life of love is the single most important thing that a human can do. There have been so many psychological studies of infants that are raised without a family, and so they're in the hospital and they're not held and they're not touched. And then so they've studied some of these children, or infants who live in orphanages and never loved and held and nurtured. And the science behind it is just absolute, that humans need love like they need food and water and shelter. Love, without that love, if you follow those young people through their lifetimes, their life will suffer. For myself, I know that being able to receive love is really hard for me. And to be able to give love is something I've had to work on really hard for a long time. It isn't natural to me, and I don't know why, but I think that's a valid statement. It's something I have to work on. And I would say that is my highest value. I'm a big follower of the ethical teachings of Jesus. And if you look at Jesus's life, he was constantly harangued because he ate with the sinners, because he went and touched the lepers. It was a very, very dangerous thing to do. He entertained prostitutes. All of Jesus's life was unreasonable, extravagant grace and love. And I have decided that to live a successful life, there will be some of that. And the best I can hope for is some of that in my life.
To me, the ultimate love is a brave heart. When I had a counseling practice, I named it Brave Heart Counseling. And very intentionally, because I thought to myself, gosh, that is how I want to live. I want to live with a brave heart. And I thought, the heart, if we have heart without bravery, then this is what I was privy to in my life. Heart without bravery meant I could be apt to comply, to people please, thinking I was being good in the process. And that for me was heart without bravery. But then I think about bravery without heart. It's just bullying. To me, the ultimate love is a brave heart, having the care, compassion, the tenderness, and then having the bravery. And I'd have to throw in there wisdom, because it is complex. You know, how do we love well? Jesus is such an incredible example of this. I mean, his wisdom of where he set boundaries with people and held grace and mercy. I mean, what an incredible guiding light.
There were those he did not offer love or grace, went into the temple and drove out the money changers. And it is never as simple and easy as it sounds. Other examples I was just thinking about was the fireman who runs into the building to save someone. That's not reasonable love.
Right.
That's extravagant love. Or the soldier who gives his life to save his brothers in arms. That's not reasonable. You can say, well, why would you do that? And really wonder, why would you do that? It's love that's beyond reason. So yeah, and I really love that idea of brave heart to do what has to be done at that moment. And sometimes love is not loving and kind like you think it would be. So if I come across someone harming another person, one person harming another, where's love then?
Yeah.
Well, love is taking action and taking steps. I think that's the money changers. He
Mhm.
saw those people harming the people he loved. And I think if you find someone, you may have to physically harm someone out as an act of love.
Right.
So it's not very easy and straightforward sometimes.
So I want to share one of the areas where I personally relate to this. One of the reasons I initially became a counselor when I was really young is because I loved the feel-good side of things. I loved whenever I could offer a genuine validation, a genuine empathy, because I really understood your behavior is driven from your needs. Let's look at your needs. And I can empathize with your needs because we all have the same needs. And I really enjoyed the pleasant side of when people felt seen and heard and acknowledged. And I still love that. But then my soul decided, hey, let's go where in order to love people well, you have to basically help them see they're doing incredibly destructive things. And so when I was working with people deep in the throes of addiction or deep in the throes of power and control within the justice system, I had to basically share with them in a way that at least attempted to maintain a relationship. You are doing tremendously harmful things. And let's look at the consequences if you don't stop. So I couldn't validate the harm they were doing, even if I could validate the need beneath it. But there's a degree of confrontation, a degree of challenge that, again, my soul, because my preference wouldn't have necessarily been to do that work. It was very hard. But my soul somehow wanted to learn those skills.
And that's where the values come into play. When things are really complicated and gray, you have values that you live by that become your North Star, and you say, I'm going this way. All that really counts is that I love and care and help as many people as I can. And in this case, this is what that will mean.
Yeah. Well, another value that's coming to mind that I know we've talked before that we both really relate on is humility.
My definition of humility then, and I just really kind of love the way you've put this all together. My definition of humility is when you are fully aware of all the best things about yourself.
Yeah.
And there are so many.
Yeah.
All the wonderful things about yourself. And you're also fully aware of all the things you've repressed and put down. And you can look at them both. You can bring them up and see them and hold them and say, yes, I have these wonderful qualities. And yes, I have these qualities that I do not like and I need to improve on. And that's humility.
Earlier, I was mentioning optimism, pessimism, and realism. There is such a grounded sense of realism with what you're sharing, where I'm not going to inflate myself by just looking at my positive traits. I'm not going to denigrate myself by just looking at the negative. I'm going to look at what is real. What is real? And there's something so, for me, and I'm curious how this is for you, Bob, there's something so grounding about that to say, all right, this is a strength that came naturally. Now I have this strength. I really worked at it. I'm really not good at that. And then the reason that's so helpful for me is because if it is something I value, then I could say, I'd like to gain skills. I'd like to gain learning and understanding and wisdom around that. And I feel strong, like when I bring the awareness to it. Yeah.
Right,
How is it for you?
That's one of the values I had, was authenticity,
Yeah.
transparency.
Yeah.
And the masks are important, and you have to have the masks to get by as a social lubricant. It makes life easier if we have the mask to wear. But if the danger, of course, is that the mask takes over, and I start thinking I'm the mask when I'm not.
Yeah.
So one of my invisible values then is transparency, honesty, authenticity, letting people see, first letting me see who I really am, and then allowing at the right time, in the right place, in the right degree, other people to see that too.
Yeah.
Tearing down the walls, and I am a wall builder. I am a master bricklayer of my life, and building walls so that when someone sees me, they see what I want them to see, and not what's really in here. And I've devoted the last 30 years to trying to overcome that, let people see me. And so that authenticity, that transparency, I think that is a value to which I strive and often fail.
One of the things I was thinking about as we were preparing for this video is how dignity is such a core value for me. So then I thought, what does that ultimately mean to me? And it's how I make choices, especially in the hard moments under fire. Like, I want to make decisions from wisdom, from truth, from love. And I want to avoid making decisions from fear, from manipulation, from comfort, or from desperation. And so then I was thinking a bit about how, well, then I have to be willing to be really uncomfortable.
So we've been very serious, about a lot of serious things, but play is really, really important. Children are designed to play. If they are kept from play, they're harmed. That is harmful to a child, to not allow them to play.
I would love to hear, how do you guys play? What is your play? One of the greatest ways that play comes out for me is through how I design my little teeny tiny forts on wheels. Whether it's a car, an RV, a minivan, I really decorate the heck out of that thing. Like, I haven't decided whether my minivan that I've recently just designed, whether it looks more like a genie bottle or more like a dollhouse. And either way, I love it, and I'm so happy in it. And it definitely brings out a sense of play.
Photography is play for me. Yeah. And so for me, I think that driving to Alaska is just going to be one big playground.
So what's really cool about what Bob is sharing is the sacred way that play intersects with life mission and calling. If you look at what Bob has done with his life, he has shared and taught millions of people how to be nomadic, which is being out in the world, experiencing beauty and adventure. It requires photography knowledge. And I just think to myself, like, what a beautiful thing that the thing that sparks joy in us and brings us alive and really captures our attention is so directly linked with kind of our mission and purpose and calling.
Right. Yeah, that's when you have the good life, is when play becomes your work. And for me, it has. Yeah. It has.
Well, and one of the things, my list was definitely far more serious, where I'm like, I value dignity and integrity and responsibility. But then as you were talking about play, I thought responsibility, the way that I think about it is, I do what needs to be done whether I want to or not. So my desire to do it is almost indifferent to knowing this is what needs to be done. And that's how I think of responsibility. As you were talking about play, I thought, gosh, I really want to align what needs to be done with what is so enjoyable to do. And that doesn't mean I'll enjoy it every second, but man, it does make for a pretty darn good life.
It does.
Yeah.
One of the things I decided many years ago, I had a really low point in my life, and the way I found out of it was to serve others. My son took his life in 2011, and when I woke up, I couldn't think of any reason to be alive. How could I be alive on this planet when my son was no longer here? And I didn't have an answer, and I had to have an answer. I had to find an answer. I literally had to find an answer, or I wasn't going to stay on this planet. And so ultimately, it became, I am here to be of service to others. I think that whenever the universe puts someone physically in front of me, I become responsible to some degree. They're always responsible for themselves. I can't take that from them. But I have a responsibility to contribute all that I can to their well-being, to their happiness, to relieve any pain that I can. And again, I can't take their pain. I can't make them well. But I can do a little. I can try. I can care. I can always be just someone who listens. And so that responsibility is what got me through those years of dark, desperate times. Responsibility saved my life. I can't just leave this earth now. I've been placed here. I've been given a calling. The calling, I cannot fail the calling. That's why I have to wake up every morning. And for a long time that was hard, but it was good enough. And I kept waking up. And I'm so grateful that those many years ago, when it was so easy to give up, that I didn't, because I took responsibility. I think the responsibility is really important.
What comes to mind is Viktor Frankl. He comes to mind in almost every single one of our discussions.
Yes.
But because he had such a powerful way of describing what Bob just shared, which is responsibility gives meaning. And that meaning in life isn't necessarily always going to be a happiness and a pleasantness. It's in fact, through what you're sharing, is that you faced really the ultimate loss, and that as a result, it made you question so much about what the meaning of life is. And you found it through being responsible.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's dignity, not only for others and the people that you're serving through saying, I'm responsible for you for this, but I think it's dignity to yourself too, to say, I'm going to make something out of a tragedy. Yeah.
Yes. I also think it brings meaning to my son's life.
Yeah.
I lost my father. When I lost my father, it was very much the same thing. There was this huge, enormous lesson. I won't go into it, but that was so important and valuable to me. And so I kind of look at both of them. I am today who I am, doing what I'm trying to do, whatever good or value that is, because of them.
Yeah.
And to a degree, I hope that I'm wherever they are, and I know they're aware, they see more value in their lives and dignity in their lives because of what they've contributed to mine.
Yeah. Yeah. I think of this lady. She was my favorite lady I ever met. She was about 89 years old, and she would just always say with a smile, God never lets 1 ounce of suffering go to waste.
That's a good one.
Yeah. And I think about that. The gift, the honoring. This is a living memory that you're giving your son and your dad, it sounds like, too.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well.
Another light, easy
on that
day.
light note. On that note of play. Really powerful stuff today. Cannot wait to read the comments. By the way, your guys' comments give meaning and purpose to this. You share such beautiful, wonderful things. You encourage one another. Absolutely love seeing that, and can't wait to hear what your values are. What are your guiding lights? What is your North Star? And how has that made a difference in your life? And
subscribe and get notification of every video, and come back, and we'll see you on the very next video.
Bye-bye.
See you then.